I'll admit, when I first saw this headline, I rolled my eyes a little. Rescue dog saves toddler's life. Sounds like the kind of thing that gets exaggerated for clicks, dressed up until it barely resembles what actually happened. I've seen enough of those stories to be skeptical by default. Then I read the actual police statement, word for word from the sheriff's office itself. And one detail about this dog's own past made me stop scrolling completely. I'm going to get to that detail in a few minutes, because without it, honestly, this story doesn't make a lot of sense. March 2017, Escanaba, Michigan. Small town up near the Upper Peninsula. The kind of place where everybody more or less knows everybody. A quiet house near an open field. A dog who never once acted strange in almost a full year of living there. Until one particular Friday morning, she did. If this one gets to you the way it got to me, go ahead and subscribe now. And tell me down in the comments where you're tuned in from tonight and what time it is where you are. I like knowing who's out there listening. Okay, here's what actually happened that morning. It was a Friday, the kind of gray, cold Michigan morning where nobody's in much of a hurry to get outside. The family had a pretty normal routine by then. Dad usually out in the garage early, Mom in the kitchen, the dog somewhere underfoot. Nothing about that particular Friday looked any different when it started. Her name was Peanut, medium-sized mixed breed, the kind of dog you wouldn't look at twice in a shelter photo. Her owners would tell you later she was shy, almost nervous around new people. Not the kind of dog that made a scene. That particular morning, she made a scene. She started running up and down the stairs, barking, over and over, in a way her mom said she'd never heard before. Not the bark for the mailman. Not the bark for a squirrel in the yard. Something else entirely. Something urgent enough that her mom stopped what she was doing in the kitchen and just watched her for a second, trying to figure out what was wrong. Peanut ran straight to the garage, where her dad was working, and wouldn't let up until he opened the door and let her out. The second that door opened, she was gone. Full speed, straight past the yard and into the open field behind the house. Her dad followed, more confused and worried at first. Dogs chase things all the time. Rabbits, birds, nothing that ever means anything. But Peanut didn't stop at the treeline the way she usually did. She kept going, straight to a ditch at the far edge of the field. And then she just stopped, stood there, turned around and looked back at him, almost like she was waiting for him to catch up to something he hadn't seen yet. He got closer, called her name. She didn't move. That's when he saw what she'd been looking at the whole time. A 3-year-old girl, curled into a tight little ball, the way you curl up when you're trying to hold on to whatever heat is left in your body, naked, lying in a drainage ditch, in temperatures barely above freezing that morning. Nobody's ever said publicly how long she'd been out there. That part never made it into any report I could find. Just found that morning in the cold. He didn't stop to think. Pulled his own shirt off right there in the field, wrapped the girl in it as best he could, and ran her back to the house. Now, before I go any further, I want to back up, because there's a reason Peanut reacted the way she did that morning. And it goes back almost a full year before any of this happened. In my opinion, this is the part of the story most people skip past too quickly, when it's actually the whole reason any of it makes sense. Peanut wasn't born into that family. She came from somewhere much worse. A year before that Friday, animal control pulled her out of a home where she'd been starved and abused for who knows how long. That part isn't on record either. Just that it had gone on long enough to leave 2 broken legs and broken ribs. When the shelter vet finally got her stable enough to examine, they found her stomach full of pieces of carpet. Carpet she'd apparently eaten out of pure hunger, because there was nothing else around to eat. Her name back then wasn't Peanut. It was Petunia. The people responsible were eventually convicted of animal abuse, according to the shelter's own records. The shelter gave her a new name, patched her up, and eventually a family took her in. For almost a year after that, she was just a regular house dog. Quiet, a little shy, sure but settled. Nobody watching her curled up on the couch every evening would have guessed there was anything left in her from what happened before. I don't know if that's science or something closer to memory. Honestly, I go back and forth on it every time I think about this story. Then March comes, and whatever she'd been carrying underneath all that quiet finally got used for something. Back at the house, the girl was freezing and shaking, barely able to speak. Peanut's family called 911 immediately, wrapped her in every blanket they could grab, tried to get some warmth back into her before the ambulance even made it down the road. By the time police and paramedics arrived, the little girl could only manage one word: doggy. That's it. That's all she said. Not her name, not where she lived. Just doggy. She was taken straight to the hospital. Nobody at the scene could tell you for sure how she was going to come out of it. 32 degrees doesn't sound like much until you picture a naked 3-year-old lying in it for who knows how many hours. Paramedics were already talking about hypothermia before the ambulance doors even shut. Peanut's family didn't hear anything for the rest of that day. No news, no call, just the kind of silence that makes you assume the worst, because that's usually what silence means. The story didn't stay local for long. Within a couple days, it picked up by national outlets. The kind of headline shared a few 100,000 times before people move on to whatever's next. Most of those articles led with the same detail. Girl found. Condition unknown. Recovering. Nobody outside that town seemed to know yet whether recovering meant she'd actually be okay. It took almost 2 full days before anyone got a real answer. She'd made it. Body temperature back to normal. No lasting damage. As far as doctors could tell, she was cold. She was scared. She made it. What police found afterward was hard to sit with. An investigation into where she'd come from turned up living conditions nobody wants to picture a 3-year-old in. She had wandered off from a normal house on a normal morning. Child Protective Services stepped in fast, removed her, along with another young child in that same home, and placed them somewhere safe. I'll be straight with you. That part doesn't wrap up clean the way the dog part does. We don't get to know what happened to that little girl after that day. Not really. I looked. There's nothing public beyond removed and placed in safe care. Maybe that's the best for her sake. Maybe it's just how these cases go. Quietly, once the dramatic part is over. What we do know is what happened back at the shelter that had saved Peanut a year earlier. Her family wrote them a letter, wanting them to know exactly what their old rescue dog had gone and done. One line from it has stuck with me more than almost anything else in this story. They said Peanut still seemed to carry a kind of sixth sense about her old life. Like some part would happen to her back, then never fully let go. It just waited quietly for a moment it could actually be used for. Without her, they wrote, that little girl might not have made it through that morning at all. I keep thinking about the timeline. A year in a house that starved her. A year in a house that loved her. Then one morning in a field, both of those years showed up at the same time. Do you think an animal can remember pain well enough to recognize it in someone else? Or was this just one very good dog in exactly the right field at exactly the right time? Write your answer down below. Subscribe if this one got to you. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.